We live in interesting times.
For the headlines.
Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam apologizes over the political crisis and unrest sparked by a proposed China-backed law that would have allowed extraditions to mainland China.
4 people were shot and wounded at a rally in Toronto on Monday for the NBA champion Raptors, and 2 people were arrested.
A leading human rights group is urging Egypt to investigate the death of former President Mohamed Morsi, a Muslim Brotherhood leader who rose to office in the country's first free elections in 2012 and was ousted a year later by the military, who has collapsed during a court session on Monday and died.
And the Iglesia Ni Cristo continues to extend comfort and aid to homesick OFWs abroad. This time it was held in Bahrain. Our ABC correspondent Clem Orhaliza will bring us the details.
About Los Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world, thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam apologized over the political crisis and unrest sparked by a proposed China-backed law that would have allowed extraditions to mainland China. Unprecedented mass rallies against the bill have rocked the city's government, plunging the city into its biggest political crisis in decades, with protesters calling for Lam to step down.
The concerns over the past few months have been caused by deficiencies in the work of the SAR government over the amendment exercise. I personally had to shoulder much of the responsibility. This has led to controversies, disputes, and anxieties in society. For this, I offer my most sincere apology to all people of Hong Kong.
Lam suspended the bill after the city saw massive rallies on June 9 and 12 with bouts of violence between the police and some protesters. But that failed to quell public anger and was followed by an even bigger protest on Sunday that organizers said drew over 2 million people, more than a quarter of the population, to the streets. Lam gave no indication she was prepared to step down, saying instead she wanted to continue to work very hard to meet the aspirations of the Hong Kong people.
She also said at the news conference that she intends to finish her term as the city's chief executive, suggesting she will not heed calls for her to step down.
至於我作為行政長官呢，係一個5年嘅任期啦，咁所以好快呢個月底呢，我就上任2週年嚇。對於未來嘅工作，我仍然係好多想做。咁所以未來嘅3年睇嚟都係非常之忙碌嘅3年，盡量能夠為香港開拓更加多嘅經濟嘅機會，改善民生，特別係希望為青年人呢提供更加多佢哋喺學業同埋事業嗰方面嘅機會。
Lam has been the focus of criticism from many in Hong Kong for having sought to push through the legislation which would allow some suspects to be sent to mainland China for trial. She said she wants a chance to do better. Lam said previously the legislation would be suspended, but protesters are demanding that it be scrapped altogether. An estimated 2 million people marched against Lam and the legislation on Sunday. Government headquarters reopened Tuesday as the number of protesters dwindled to a few dozen.
Meanwhile, members of the Civil Human Rights Front in Hong Kong say they're angry that Chief Executive Carrie Lam is refusing to step down despite days of large protests over a proposed extradition bill. Let's listen in.
We are all very angry that Carrie Lam still refused to step down, still refused to withdraw the extradition bill, and refused to take the police or herself to be accountable for what happened on the 12th of June, where the police force used excessive force and condemn us as rioters. All of the demands of Carrie Lam stepping down, withdrawal of the bill, and also hold the police accountable are all ignored.
After millions of Hong Kong people continue to join the rally protest, nearly 100 of them have been sent to hospital, some of them have been arrested, and we are not sure when will they face certain prosecution. Carrie Lam just chose to say sorry, and that's all, and totally ignore the request of Hong Kong citizens. More and more rally, action, or protest will happen soon, especially before the G20 summit and also before the 22nd anniversary of the Hong Kong handover. 3個星期裏邊，
The toll from a strong 6.0 magnitude earthquake in southwest China rose to 12 dead and 134 injured on Tuesday as rescuers pulled bodies and survivors from wrecked buildings. More than 4,000 people were relocated as dozens of structures were damaged or collapsed following late Monday's earthquake outside Yibin in Sichuan province, according to the city government. State broadcaster CCTV showed footage of rescuers bringing a survivor out of the rubble of a building on a stretcher overnight. Other images showed a woman being helped out of another collapsed structure.
地震还造成部分房屋、道路、电力、通讯等设施受损，实现2级，快速从本季救灾物资储备库中向有关乡镇调拨国内救灾物资，已先期调拨450顶帐篷、5300床棉被、1500张热电床运往灾区。
The area was hit by a series of at least 4 aftershocks, the largest of which had a magnitude of 5.1. The U.S. Geological Survey put the magnitude of the main quake at 5.8. Earthquakes regularly strike Sichuan, where a powerful 7.9 magnitude quake left 87,000 people dead or missing in 2008.
其实这就是在发生特殊情况的时候，能够便于人员的一个及时的撤离。大概就是在刚。
In other news, police said 4 people were shot and wounded at a rally in Toronto on Monday for the NBA champion Raptors, and 2 people were also arrested. Now, droves of Raptors fans ran from the shooting in a stampede from the City Hall Square, which was packed with tens of thousands of fans. 1 million or more fans earlier packed downtown Toronto for a parade for the Raptors, raising concerns about safety and overcrowding. Toronto Police Chief Mark Saunders said 4 people suffered gunshot wounds, but said none of the injuries were life-threatening. Others suffered minor injuries as they tried to get away from the shooting, according to Saunders, who asked for witnesses and people who might have video to come forward and help the investigators.
Today at approximately 3:45 in the evening, calls were coming in to 911 with regards to a shooting occurred. What happened, officers arrived relatively quickly, and as a result of that, 3 people were arrested in total, 2 on one incident and 1 on another. We've retrieved 2 firearms at this point in time. The investigation is incredibly early at this point in time. We're appealing for witnesses. This did not happen in a vacuum. This happened in broad open spaces right now where we had over 1 million people that were here. We want the witnesses, those who were here, 99.9% of the people were here to enjoy the festivities of the Raptors winning the championship. We want them to step up and to help us by giving us as much evidence if you have.
You just saw pandemonium, people just running everywhere, people screaming, and I guess it filtrated as soon as it said shooting.
We were kind of pushed up against a wall, so we just had people squish us, like we had nowhere to go. Even if you wanted to exit, you couldn't. We were just literally stuck.
Everyone was just trampling over each other. There were kids who fell down too. A lot of people actually broke their legs too, and everyone was just trying to get out, pushing people.
So if everybody please stay calm, we're going to provide
During a speech from one of the team owners, the host of the rally interrupted the proceedings to alert the crowd to an emergency and asked for calm. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Toronto Mayor John Tory, NBA Finals MVP Kawhi Leonard, and other players were among those on stage at the time.
Egypt's first democratically elected president, Islamist leader Mohamed Morsi, was buried under heavy security early on Tuesday, a day after his dramatic collapse and death inside a Cairo courtroom, a member of his defense team said. Egypt's state TV says the country's ousted president, Mohamed Morsi, died on Monday after collapsing during a court session. It said the 67-year-old was attending a session in his trial on espionage charges when he blacked out and then died. Morsi, who hailed from Egypt's largest Islamist group, the now outlawed Muslim Brotherhood, was elected president in 2012 in the country's first free elections following the ouster the year before of longtime leader Hosni Mubarak. The military ousted Morsi in 2013 after massive protests and crushed the Brotherhood in a major crackdown, arresting Morsi and many others of the group's leaders. During his years in prison, Morsi, who was known to have diabetes, was often held in solitary confinement and was largely barred from receiving visitors. His family was only allowed to visit 3 times while in detention. Morsi continued to appear in court on a range of charges. In early court sessions, he gave angry speeches until judges ordered him kept in a glass cage where they could turn off his audio. Morsi's Brotherhood on Monday accused the government of assassinating him through years of poor prison conditions.
الدكتور محمد مرسي اليوم شهيد بطل. اليوم دماؤه يتحملها النظام المصري الانقلابي العسكري ويتحملها كل هذه الأدوات العسكرية الذين سجنوه ظلما وحرموه من الدواء وحرموه أن يقابل أسرته وأهله. هذا الدكتور محمد مرسي اليوم هو الذي جرى معه جريمة مكتملة الأركان. وطالب بتحقيق دولي فيما جرى.
Late Monday, Egypt's chief prosecutor said Morsi's body would be examined to determine the cause of his death. State TV, citing an unnamed medical source, said he died after suffering a heart attack. Morsi collapsed Monday just after he had addressed the court, speaking from inside a glass cage and warning that he had many secrets he could reveal, a judicial official said. In his final comments, he continued to insist he was Egypt's legitimate president, demanding a special tribunal. One of his defense lawyers, Kamel Madour, told the Associated Press. State TV said Morsi died before he could be taken to hospital.
Today in a court hearing, Morsi appeared before the judge, and he was talking for 5 minutes, after which, according to the national state TV, he suffered a sudden coma. This is not the first time that Morsi suffers a coma inside his detention, and he said before that he is worried about his diabetes and his insulin, and that the dose was not appropriate, and that he was never seen by independent doctors, because also we know that in Egypt, prison doctors are part and employees of the Interior Ministry. They are not independent, and they actually cannot decide or act without the approval of their supervisors, who also police officers. We believe that President Morsi isolation and ill treatment might actually amount to torture according to the UN Convention Against Torture and according to the basic principles of keeping inmates that the Egyptian government completely ignored and disregarded. I think Sisi's government have shown utter contempt for the basic human needs.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan offered his condolences over the death of Egypt's ousted President Mohamed Morsi. Speaking to reporters on Monday, Erdogan described Morsi as a brother and martyr while calling current President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, who deposed him, cruel.
In other news, the U.S. and Iran edged toward a flashpoint as Tehran announced it was breaking compliance with the accord that keeps it from making nuclear weapons. And the Trump administration followed by ordering 1,000 more troops to the Middle East. The Pentagon said the deployment includes security forces and troops for additional surveillance and intelligence gathering in the region. While the number is small, it represents an escalation of U.S. military might aimed at deterring Iran and calming allies worried that transit through key shipping lanes could be in jeopardy. Tehran's announcement earlier on Monday means it could soon start to enrich uranium to just a step away from weapons-grade levels, challenging President Trump's assurances to allies that the U.S. withdrawal from the deal last year made the world a safer place. The developments are bound to inflame tensions in the Middle East and pose a test or resolve in credibility for both adversaries. Iran said it would break a limit on uranium stockpiles established by the 2015 agreement with world powers that was intended to restrict the Islamic Republic's nuclear program in exchange for an easing of international sanctions. The move also comes as Washington accuses Iran of attacking 2 tankers near the Persian Gulf, and the Iranians deny responsibility. With details murky and no one owning up to the attacks, the Pentagon released new photos intended to bolster its case that Iran carried out the attacks.
A Christchurch businessman who shared a video of worshippers being slaughtered at a New Zealand mosque has been sentenced to 21 months in prison. Philip Arps had earlier pleaded guilty to 2 counts of distributing the video, which was live-streamed on Facebook by a gunman on March 15 as he began killing 51 people at 2 mosques. Judge Stephen O'Driscoll said that when questioned about the video, Arps had showed no empathy towards the victims. The judge said Arps had strong and unrepentant views about the Muslim community and had, in effect, committed a hate crime. Judge O'Driscoll said Arps had sent the video to 30 associates and had also asked somebody to insert crosshairs and include a kill count.
By the year 2050, there will be some 9.7 billion people living on Earth, according to a UN population report released on Monday. However, the overall growth rate will continue to fall and more countries will have to adapt to the consequences of an aging population. Take a listen.
From an estimated 2.5 billion people in 1950, the global population has grown more than 3-fold and now numbers around 7.7 billion. Using demographic and statistical methods, we have projected the global population forward to 2100. Our latest projections indicate that growth will continue and that the global population could number around 9.7 billion in 2050 and 10.9 billion in 2100. Just as significant as the increase in numbers is the fact that the global population is aging. Across the globe, the distribution of the population by age is shifting upward from younger to older ages. Understanding and anticipating these changes, both the growth and the aging of the human population, are extremely important as the world seeks to set a path towards sustainable development. Nevertheless, one feature that all of the current scenarios have in common is a continuing slowdown in the pace of population growth from now until 2100. According to the projections being released today, it seems plausible that the world's population could reach its peak around 2100 at a level of nearly 11 billion people. However, that outcome is not certain, and in the end, the peak could come earlier or later at a lower or higher level of total population.
Good afternoon.
The Iglesia Ni Cristo continues to extend comfort and aid to homesick OFWs abroad. This time it was held in Bahrain. Here's Clem Orhaliza for the details.
We are here at the Gulf Convention Center where the Iglesia Ni Cristo members have gathered for an event aimed at helping overseas Filipino workers in Bahrain.
The Aid for OFWs held at the Gulf Convention Center in Manama City was attended by at least 5,000 people from all over Bahrain. The guests arrived in buses early in the morning as they were picked up from different points in the country. The scorching heat that day did not hinder the members of the Iglesia Ni Cristo, whose aim was to make a difference by distributing goods to the OFWs in need. The goodie bags were distributed after gathering all of the guests indoors where it was cool and away from the heat of the sun.
Actually, para po sa akin, para po sa mga OFW, isang malaking tulong po yung ginagawa nila kasi hindi naman po lahat is mayroong magandang buhay dito. Actually, halos lahat po ng OFW is nagsasuffer din po na siyang hindi alam ng mga pamilya sa Pilipinas. Sa ginagawa po nilang tulong, nagkakaroon po ng kahit paano isang malaking kabawasan sa mga gastos na meron po.
Ay malaking tulong din po sa amin talaga ng mga OFW na kahit mahirap nagtitiis po dito sa pagtatrabaho para po sa ating pamilya. Kaya malaking pasasalamat po namin at malaking tulong na rin po yung pinamimigay nyo sa aming mga grocery. Ay, salamat po.
Kami po ay lubos na nagagalak sa pakikipagkaisa po namin sa lingap na ito naming sinagawa para po makatulong sa aming kapwa at mga kababayan upang maibsan ang kanilang lungkot at makatulong po sa panandalian nilang pangangailangan sa kanilang pang-araw-araw po na pamumuhay.
I'm doubly pleased over this occasion because it's not just a gathering, a simple gathering. It's a gathering to give aid, compassion, and recognize the needs of the people. No? Gaya nga ng sinasabi natin na lingap, no? Lingap, this comes from a sincere and generous feeling that there are others who have more, and there are others who have less, and those who have more have an obligation to give to. And that was really obvious, and without choosing anyone, who's choosing the recipient, it was open for everyone, and those who came benefited, and we realized that this is what the Filipinos do, no? The bayanihan spirit, ating pakikikapwa, pakikisama. These are universal themes, no? Na we all come together, kahit nasa ibang at malayong bansa tayo, nagkakaisa tayo dito dahil alam natin, kung may pagkakataon tayong tumulong lalo sa ating mga kapwa Pilipino at lalo na sa mas nangangailangan, ay tayo ay handang tumulong. At that was one good shining example that was really exemplified in this occasion.
There is an estimated number of 53,000 OFWs here in Bahrain, and not all of them have the budget to afford their daily needs, such as food, transportation, and housing.
The Aid for Overseas Filipino Workers seems to be a huge success, and they will most likely be doing this kind of event again in the future in order to further help the Filipinos who are in need in the Middle East. Reporting from Bahrain, this is your Eagle News correspondent, Clement Orhaliza, and I'm one with 25.
American businesses and trade associations are telling the Trump administration that an escalating trade war with China will hurt families, jobs, and the U.S. economy. The U.S. Trade Representative's Office, or USTR, is holding public hearings starting this week for 7 days that will consider extending the 25% tariffs to practically all Chinese imports not already hit with levies, including toys, shirts, household goods, and sneakers. More than 600 other companies and trade associations, including Walmart and Target, signed a letter dated last Thursday that was organized by a business coalition called Tariffs, Hurt the Heartland. Trump has already imposed 25% tariffs on $250 billion of goods from China. The letter calls for the White House to remove the tariffs, saying they will have a significant negative long-term impact on American businesses, farmers, families, and the U.S. economy.
What we're urging is, rather than more tariffs and an escalation, both sides need to come back to the table. They need to get back to the point where we were, roughly 2 months ago. They need to finish this deal. And if they finish this deal, that'll be good for both near-term and long-term economic growth, particularly here in the United States. In particular, it becomes an escalating cost for consumers. So if you look at the breadth of Chinese imports and the tariffs that have been imposed to date, in most cases, it's on intermediate inputs. So things that manufacturers or businesses buy from China that they then use to make other things here domestically in the United States. We're getting to that last raft of tariffs where we're talking about things that you and I buy in a store, and that's going to be felt directly by consumers. There's much less margin to absorb those increased tariff costs, and this is going to be a significant departure from what we've experienced over the last year or so with respect to how tariffs impact not just the economy but American families. It's certainly causing businesses to relook at their supply chain and their structure, but that's obviously easier said than done, right? In many cases, you're talking about long-standing, complicated supply chains, relationships based on quality assurances and things that have been worked out over a significant period of time. You can't simply just pick that up and move it somewhere else, all right? You can't move on a dime in these situations. So I think what folks are really looking for is, what's the long-term trajectory here? Are we addressing the bad industrial policies that China has? If so, and we're doing it in a way that ultimately leads to the removal of all these tariffs, that's good news and that's certainty. I think more than anything else, that's what American businesses are looking for, is a little more certainty about what the future looks like.
Meanwhile, India imposed higher tariffs on 28 items imported from the U.S. in retaliation to Washington's recent withdrawal of trade privileges for New Delhi. The increased duties apply to products including almonds, apples, and walnuts. The Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs said India would implement the imposition of retaliatory duties on 28 specified goods originating in or exported from the U.S., it said in its notification. The list initially included 29 goods, but Artemia, a kind of shrimp, has been removed from the list. India is the #2 market of California almonds and Washington apples. The trade tensions come despite efforts from Washington to boost ties with India as a counterweight to China and assertions made by both U.S. President Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi about their good relationship. The stage for the row was set last year after Washington refused to exempt India from higher steel and aluminum tariffs, in keeping with Trump's decision to act against countries with which it has a large trade deficit. India responded by saying it would raise import taxes on a slew of U.S. goods, but it delayed raising tariffs several times, hoping for negotiation to tackle the sticky trade issue. However, Trump's decision this month to strip New Delhi of its preferential trade status appears to have prompted the latest Indian move. According to the new tariffs, import duty on walnut has been hiked to 120% from 30%, and on chickpeas and lentils, it has been raised to 70% from 30% currently. The trade row is likely to be taken up when Trump and Modi meet at the G20 summit on June 28 to the 29th in Osaka.
Facebook is leaping into the world of cryptocurrency with its own digital money, designed to let people save, send, or spend money as easily as firing off text messages. Lead Libra, described as a new global currency, was unveiled Tuesday in a new initiative in payments for the world's biggest social network, with the potential to bring crypto money out of the shadows and into the mainstream. Facebook and some 24 partners released a prototype of Libra as an open source code to be used by developers interested in weaving it into apps, services, or businesses ahead of a rollout as global digital money next year. An eponymous nonprofit association based in Geneva will oversee the blockchain or blockchain-based Libra, maintaining a real-world asset reserve to keep its value stable. Libra Association debuted with 28 members, including MasterCard, Visa, Stripe, Kiva, PayPal, Lyft, Uber, and Women's World Banking. The launch comes with Facebook seeking to move past a series of lapses on privacy and data protection, which have tarnished its image and sparked scrutiny from regulators around the world. Chief Executive Mark Zuckerberg has promised a new direction for Facebook built around smaller groups, private messaging, and payments.
In other news, Gloria Vanderbilt, the great-great-granddaughter of financier Cornelius Vanderbilt and the mother of CNN newsman Anderson Cooper, died on Monday at the age of 95. Anderson announced his mother's death via a first-person obituary that aired on the network. He said Vanderbilt died at home with friends and family at her side. She had been suffering from advanced stomach cancer, he noted. The heiress, artist, and romantic began her extraordinary life as the poor little rich girl of the Great Depression, survived family tragedy and multiple marriages, and reigned during the 70s and 80s as a designer jeans pioneer. Her life was chronicled in sensational headlines from her childhood through 4 marriages and 3 divorces. She married for the first time at 17, causing her aunt to disinherit her. Her husbands included Leopold Stokowski, the celebrated conductor, and Sidney Lumet, the award-winning movie and television director. In 1988, she witnessed the suicide of one of her 4 sons. Vanderbilt was a talented painter and collagist who also acted on stage and television. She was a fabric designer who became an early enthusiast for designer denim. She partnered with Mohan Murjani, who introduced a $1 million advertising campaign in 1978 that turned the Gloria Vanderbilt brand with its signature white swan label into a sensation. At its peak in 1980, it was generating over $200 million in sales. Vanderbilt wrote several books, including the 2004 chronicle of her love life, It Seemed Important at the Time, a romance memoir, which drops such names as Errol Flynn, Frank Sinatra, Marlon Brando, and Howard Hughes. She claimed her only happy marriage was to author Wyatt Cooper, which ended with his death in 1978 at the age of 50. Gloria Laura Madeline Sophie Vanderbilt was born in 1924, a century after her great-great-grandfather started the family fortune, first in steamships, later in railroads. He left around $100 million when he died in 1877 at age 82. Her father, Reginald Claypool Vanderbilt, was 43, a gambler and boozer dying of liver disease when he married Gloria Morgan, 19, in 1923. Their daughter was 1 when Vanderbilt died in 1925, having gone through $25 million in 14 years. Beneficiary of a $5 million trust fund, Vanderbilt became the poor little rich girl in 1934 at age 10 as the object of a custody fight between her globe-trotting mother and matriarchal aunt. The aunt, Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney, 59, who controlled $78 million and founded the Whitney Museum of American Art, won custody of her niece. After spending the next 7 years on her aunt's Long Island estate, Vanderbilt went to Hollywood. She dated celebrities and declared she would marry Hughes. Instead, the 17-year-old wed Hughes press agent Pascal de Sico, prompting her aunt to cut Gloria out of her will. Vanderbilt came into her own $5 million trust fund in 1945 at the age 21. She also divorced de Sico, whom she had beaten her off, who she said had beaten her often, and the next day married the 63-year-old Stokowski. The marriage to the conductor lasted 10 years and produced two sons, Stanislaus and Christopher. Vanderbilt married Lumet in 1956, lived with him and her children in a 10-room duplex penthouse on Gracie Square. She divorced Lumet and married Cooper in 1963. Their elder son, Carter, a Princeton graduate and editor at American Heritage, killed himself in 1988 at age 23, leaping from his mother's 14th floor apartment as she tried to stop him. Police said he had been treated for depression, and friends said he was despondent over a breakup with a girlfriend. After her success in designer jeans, Vanderbilt branched out into other areas including shoes, scarves, table and bed linens, and china through her company Gloria Concepts. In 1988, Vanderbilt joined the designer fragrance market with her signature Glorious. By the late 1980s, Vanderbilt sold the name and licenses for the brand name Gloria Vanderbilt to Gitano, who transferred it to a group of private investors in 1993. More recently, her stretch jeans have been licensed through Jones Apparel Group, which acquired Gloria Vanderbilt Apparel in 2002 for $138 million. Vanderbilt became the target of a swindle in the late 70s and early 80s when she made her psychiatrist and a lawyer's associates in her business affairs. A court held that the two looted millions from Vanderbilt's bank accounts.
Four people returning from a Hindu pilgrimage have died while traveling in a non-air-conditioned coach on an Indian train during a summer heat wave. Temperatures during the day Tuesday had soared to 48 Celsius, or that's 118 Fahrenheit. Railway official Manoj Kumar says the four, who were between 69 and 81 years old, were part of a group returning to the southern state of Kerala after visiting the holy city of Varanasi in northern India. Kumar said the four fell sick in their coach, and the doctors who attended to them at Jhansi station found them dead. They were sent for autopsies. Traveling in air-conditioned coaches is too expensive for many poorer Indians. Schools and colleges were closed due to the heat wave, and people advised to stay indoors during daytime.
Plastic, paper, metal, and Japan's kamikatsu sorting rubbish isn't that simple. Residents face a mind-boggling 45 separate categories for their garbage as the town aims to be zero waste by 2020. Take a look.
く分別をすることからスタートしてずっとリサイクル率を上げるために頑張ってきた部分もあるんですけど、今後はやっぱり出したゴミをどう処理するかっていうことではなくって、根本的にやっぱゴミを出さない方向での政策をちょっといろいろ考えていかないといけないなとは思ってます。
Let's visit the Jazz Museum in New Orleans with our ABC correspondent, Don Orozco.
Arriving here at the Louis Armstrong International Airport here in New Orleans, Louisiana. And join me today as I embark on a tour around New Orleans 14 years after Typhoon Katrina. Check it out. Join me. The vibrant city of New Orleans in the state of Louisiana is celebrating its 300 years. Life has completely changed in the city, who 14 years ago was devastated by Typhoon Katrina. Locals will tell you that for 2 months, practically the whole city was flooded by at least 5 feet of water. 14 years after, the city has turned around and life went on with music and festivals after festivals and festivals after festivals with music. After all, the city used to be home for the NBA's New Orleans Jazz, now Utah, but is now home for the Pelicans, the state's national bird. Outside the city are the different swamps, all the way to Baton Rouge, and the depiction of different forms which are all rich in history of slavery. I had the opportunity to visit 2 farms and was able to see the preserved bank houses of the slaves, their tools, and some of their manifesto. It is quite an experience to see all of this and witness this happening right before your very eyes. In the famous French Quarter and Bourbon streets, people just randomly set up their instruments and start to render tourists, including me, beautiful soul music. You will be surprised to know that in New Orleans, you will see the beauty of the Mississippi River and the biggest sugar plantation dubbed to be the second next only to Nigeria. It is also host of thousands of alligators roaming around the swamps of Louisiana. It was to me a completely different experience. Reporting at the Louis Armstrong Airport, this is Don Orozco for Eagle News.
Thanks, Don.
Thanks, Don. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out our boards and Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles and
we're one with 25.